Today I'd like to share with you one of the most aggressive chess gambits that can help you to win fast. I'm Grandmaster Igor Smirnov, and without further ado, let's jump right into it. The gambit arises from the first move pawn e4, and after pawn e5 we're going into the king's gambit. And here, after we go into the king's gambit accepted, there are a couple main moves for black here. One of them is bishop e7. It was played by Garry Kasparov and some other strong players as well, because it's both solid, just developing a piece, and aggressive because it prepares bishop h4, attacking the white's king over here. Therefore, it's a pretty good option to play. And against this move, there is a very interesting opening called Bertin's Gambit, where you go bishop c4, allowing this check on h4, and instead of the classical move king to f1, you go all out with your attack by playing g3, sacrificing another pawn, and now after black captures, you simply castle here, prioritizing your quick development, offering yet another pawn to black, and now instead of recapturing, you play king to h1. It's a really beautiful position here, which is hard to evaluate. White just sacrificed all of the pieces of his kingside, even though he castled there anyway, so it looks weird. Now, why would white keep this pawn instead of capturing it? Actually, strangely enough, this pawn serves in the white's favor, because it's kind of like a shield that covers the white's king from any potential checks along the h-file, and therefore it really helps the white's king. And even though it seems that exposed at first, in reality this king is completely safe and there is no way for black to attack it. Versus the black's king is actually in a pretty big danger. You can see that the white's pieces are lining up here against the f7 square, the knight can possibly jump somewhere there, and therefore within just a few moves you can deliver a very crushing attack. And if your opponent is not prepared, it's very likely for you to win here quickly. For example, if they play bishop e7, and it's a normal move to play actually, because black can develop their knight, which they would consider normally, because in that case the bishop on h4 lost its protection, it's not supported by the queen anymore, and therefore white can simply take the bishop for nothing and win it. Therefore black can't just develop a piece, and that's why if they want to castle, they have to do something about that bishop first. And that's why they may just go ahead and play bishop e7, putting the bishop back to safety. But in fact, strangely enough, this move almost loses down to forcing checkmate in 9 moves, which is hard to believe, but it's almost a forcing checkmate in 9 moves. And the winning shot for white is bishop takes f7 here. This sacrifice forces the black's king to move forward, and now knight goes to e5, enabling this discovered check as well as check delivers by the knight. And the king needs to move somewhere. Going forward is obviously dangerous. If it tries to hide back, then queen comes here to h5, delivering check from this side, and this right hook pretty much finishes the game. If g6, which is forced, then knight takes. We're breaking through the defense in the most brutal way possible. If black takes it, then it's just checkmate in 1. Queen takes g6, that is it. If black doesn't take, that doesn't help either. If they go knight to f6, let's say, which is the main move here for black, trying to attack the queen, but white is willing to sacrifice the rook because the checkmate is soon to come here. After bishop takes, there is knight to e5, opening up this diagonal to deliver a check and to prepare queen f7, which can be a checkmate potentially. So the best of what black can do here is king e7, going into this dangerous walk, but white can just keep checking the king, and in the line like this, this is a pretty cool position because it is forced. And here after pawn a3, king a4, pawn b3, you finish the game with 2 elegant pawn moves, pawn a3 and pawn b3. I think it's an extremely unique position of chess. It's extremely rare that you would win a game and deliver a checkmate by 2 concessive moves, pawn a3 and pawn b3. So I really wish that you have it in one of your games, because it's marvelous. Okay, here we are with the King's Gambit once again. Let's see what other options black has here. After pawn takes, knight f3, in this video we're analyzing bishop e7. By the way, of course, there are a couple other options black has here. I've got another video which you may check out later, which covers King's Gambit overall. And also let me ask your opinion, because I've created several videos about the King's Gambit already. I don't know if you're interested in more content about this. Therefore, if you are interested, then please vote for it. And if this video gets 2000 likes, I'll know that you are still interested and I'll create more content about the King's Gambit. And now let's continue with the Bertin Gambit. After bishop c4, allowing this check, white's willing to sacrifice all of the pawns of his kingside to get this superior development and great attacking chances. Now, in the previous game we analyzed that moving the bishop backwards is losing for black. What if they try pawn d6? Another very normal looking move, opening up this bishop over here, and that fails due to similar tactics. Bishop takes f7 once again, and after that, this time we go knight g5 check, which is a double check to the king, delivered by the knight as well as the rook, therefore the king has to go. If they try to move it backwards, which is a logical looking move, but in fact it turns out to be a mistake because it fails to queen h5 check. And this is a multi-purpose move, it delivers the check. In some variations, the queen is ready to play queen to f7 and deliver a checkmate in some variations, but also it simply attacks this bishop over here. Therefore, even if you can checkmate black, let's say they play g6 and cover this diagonal, at the very least you get your piece back, and now you're not sacrificing anything, and you have this super strong attack risk-free. Black's king is stuck here, it can't castle anymore, it's exposed, while, as always, the white's king is perfectly safe here on h1. There is also one funny line here. Some of your opponents will notice the pin along this diagonal, and they'll try to take advantage of this and to trick you by playing pawn h6, thinking that, you know, somehow this knight is in trouble. And if they ever try this against you, then you're afraid to say this. And after that, you play a rook to f8 check. So you counter trick your opponent with these really nasty tactics, because after king takes, it deflects the king from the queen protection, and now this check opens up the discovered attack to the queen. So after bishop takes, there is queen takes d8, winning the queen, and also this queen is completely dominating along the last rank, attacks everything, so that's an easily winning position for white here. If they go king g7, you can even bring your bishop with a decisive effect here from this side, and that will be deadly within just a few moves. Another popular way for black to try to hold this position is the move knight to h6. As we discussed earlier, the knight cannot be developed normally either to f6 or e7, because that will block the connection between the queen and this bishop, so white can just go ahead and grab this bishop for nothing. Therefore, for lack of normal options, the knight has to go to the edge with knight to h6. And black hopes to castle and put their king to safety. But that doesn't really work, because white has a very simple move, pawn d4, opening up this bishop, and therefore the black plan just fails. If they castle, and what else can they do? You just go ahead and grab this knight, which completely opens up the king, so it couldn't really hide there on the king side. And even more so, now there are multiple ways for you to continue your attack here. For example, you can even go in the most straightforward way, knight to e5, focusing all of your forces against this f7 square, and it's pretty clear that it's gonna be disastrous for black, because you're gonna reach the black's king in the very near future. If they try pawn d5, which is probably the best try, you can either take this pawn or even take the pawn on f7 first, because that also attacks the queen here. And the point is, after they recapture, now you take this pawn on d5, put in this pin, so that you want to win this rook in the future and to keep attacking black's king. It's pretty obvious by now that black couldn't really put their king to safety and to just castle. And after, let's say, bishop f6, which is what they play, trying to cover it, you've got queen h5, getting the queen involved, putting one more attack to this rook, and the black's position falls apart after they try to defend it somehow. Let's say they play queen to e7. You can win here probably in many different ways. One of them is taking here on f7, and after queen takes, you can take there, but even stronger is just to take the bishop, taking advantage of the pin. And now, so the queen cannot move out of this diagonal, it would have to take here. And at the end of this forcing line, white won material, and all these pawns of black are weak, and white will only need to bring their other rook into play, and the game is over. And so it's time to resign for black here. Now let's think about the King's Gambit in reverse perspective. What if someone tries playing the Bertin Gambit against you? How should you react? Well, first of all, I've got another video where I talk about the King's Gambit, how to play against the King's Gambit, which you may wish to check out later. But even the Bertin Gambit should not be that deadly for black if Kasparov played it as black, right? there should be the way out. And here, let's reach our main position once again. The best response for black in this position would be the move pawn d5. Black is willing to sacrifice one pawn back to free up their development so that they can potentially bring their pieces into the game quickly. And now the queen is getting involved, the knight also has more space, so this d5 counter blow is usually the right way for black to counterattack in many lines of the king's gambit. For example, after white takes here on d5, black can now bring their bishop into play, either to g4 or h3. Bishop h3 suggested by a computer. I still think that the position remains to be extremely complex, even though objectively speaking black is doing well here, but again, playing it in blitz I think is still perfectly fine. For example, in a position like that you can continue with something like queen e2 check to the king. Still black has to keep defending this bishop on h4, so they'd probably have to move the king. Now some players just move the rook away, but I don't like it too much. I think when you play gambit you gotta be willing to sacrifice and play for attack. So I would suggest just playing something like knight to c3, giving up the exchange, because after that you're still having great attacking chances. Right now black looks safe at the moment, but you're having advantage in development. You only need to play d4 and your pieces are ready to jump into the game. The knight can go there, opening up the queen. The black's king overall is very dangerously placed there on f8. You can attack it along the f-file. You can even consider playing, let's say, pawn b3 and bring the bishop over here and attack the king from the queen side. So there are multiple attacking ideas here from the white side, and definitely it's not easy for black to handle it, especially in a blitz game. So I think it's still playable, even though of course I would not recommend that you actually play it against a strong opponent in a long time control game. If you want to see the continuation of this video about the King's Gambit, then don't forget to vote for it, hit the like, and if we get the 2000 likes, I'll know that you guys are interested and I'll record more content about the King's Gambit. Also, if you wish to bring your chess to the next level, you may click the link and watch the free masterclass, the best way to improve a chess instantly. Keep crushing it, talk soon.